Thank you.
Joycelyn? Ladies in the room. Steve Rowling?
You should be online.
Brent Shondelmeyer's in the room.
Here.
Michelle?
I'm here.
Thank you. Rita?
Here.
Thank you. Ron?
Here.
Charlotte? Yummy?
Here.
Michael?
Here.
Noel? Steve Rowling? Joycelyn? Lori?
This is Lori.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum. The first matter is the approval of the agenda, so glad to entertain a motion for that.
We'll move.
Thank you. Second?
A second, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. All in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Abstaining? Okay, the agenda is approved. The next matter is the consent agenda. And also like to entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstaining? Great. The agenda's passed.
I see Steve Rowling on there now.
Steve's on? Oh, great.
Thank you.
The first matter to come for the board today is the awards and recognition. And Charlotte, here is a certificate on behalf of the board and everybody, thanking you for your 3 years of service.
Thank you very much.
Just getting started.
And I have one. Actually, I'm unaware of any other ones, but if I did have any other recognitions, it would pale in comparison, I would suggest. So tonight, we are going to recognize Kimberly Howard. And Kimberly she will celebrate her 40th anniversary as an employee in August. Wow. And so a little ahead of the game, but yeah, 40 years in August. And as far as we can tell from our files, we've only had one other 40-year employee in the history of the library. She's a pretty rare air. She hired in 1981 at our Blue Springs branch. And that was it the old Western Auto in downtown Blue Springs is where that was? Yeah. And so to put this a little bit in context, is that when I came to work at Mid-Continent in 1991 to be the branch manager, Kimberly had already been there 10 years. And so we worked together at Blue Springs South for a decent amount of time. Kimberly did a homeschool program for us. The really fun thing that I could always count on for Kimberly when I was a branch manager was anytime it seemed like I had an unusual idea, wanted to try to do a story time at night, wanted to try to do community programming, Kimberly would always say, yeah, let's try it. And so it was kind of, I think, that attitude. And after 19 years of kind of trying everything she could at a branch, she came here to the headquarters building to help us with our community programming effort. So helped us put together our community programming calendar, built long-standing relationships with many of our presenters, everyone from Gerald Dickens, which Gerald, assuming the airplanes get out, is coming back. Mostly to see Kimberly, we think. But Jim Cosgrove, Mr. Stinky Feet, I mean, just great relationships that she has with these presenters, which has allowed us to all kinds of great things. Kimberly has obviously sort of rolled with the changes, helped us with creating several centralized efforts to ensure quality, ensure that we were doing things the right thing, the right ways. Clearly a true leader in library programming, ranging from training to the importance of every detail and preparation of our programs to make our customers as well as our presenters feel comfortable and do the best possible job that they can. And everything I'm saying does not even begin to rise to the level of gratitude that we would really owe to somebody who's been here. Really, they committed her entire adult life to us. And so we have a very, very small token of our appreciation. We actually found the old style mid-continent tenure pins. We found a 40-year tenure pin. And we have this really nice commemorative vase that says, Kimberly Howard, thank you for 40 years of dedicated, exceptional service. MCPL staff and customers of Clay, Jackson, and Platte counties, as well as our certificate.
I would just start.
Yeah.
So here's your.
And that's Steve and Kimberly in the picture.
That is actually.
That's Steve and Kimberly back there.
40-year pin. Yeah, it's legacy pins.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, he's in it.
Kimberly, would you like to say anything at all? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I can't believe it's been 40 years. That just blows me away. I don't think I have quite another 40 years in me. I think I still have some good years left. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dylan, as our current supervisor,
Yeah,
anything to say?
Just honored and blessed to have the chance to work with Kimberly on a day in, day out basis the last several years. And if you go to any mid-con program, there is 1,000% chance that program has been impacted by Kimberly's training, guidance, or scheduling. So really, like when we do our facilitator training, Kimberly talks about welcoming people into our spaces and driving home that point of Mid-Continent being a safe and welcoming space. Kimberly's been as big of a driver as anybody. So thrilled to work with Kimberly and has just done so many fantastic things for us.
No.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Thank you
So much. I was just asked by a fellow trustee, do we really allow people to start when they're 5 years old?
Well, you know, labor laws were a little different
Yeah,
back
that's right.
then, John, but
Sorry.
Thank you.
yeah, you know, in truth, I mean, Kimberly started, she's a few years younger than I am. She started working when she was in high school.
That's
She never
amazing.
worked anywhere else.
Yeah.
Actually, in terms of longevity, Brian Gash is really similar. Started working in high school.
Yeah. Wish that was true of society generally. You know, it used to be sort of not standard to be that long, but it certainly was more prevalent that you would have tenure like that. But we don't quite have that in these days.
We are fortunate that Kimberly has shared her time with us. It's been very good for our community.
Just a general comment. And about 2 years ago, there was this just absolutely incredible national level veterans program at the Genealogy Center. And at that day, there was an absolutely incredible storm that went through, and it didn't demolish, but really disturbed a lot of the outside activities.
Yeah.
And Kimberly and Dylan and the people that worked with them did a phenomenal job. It was seamless by the time the storm passed through and we showed up hours later. It was just as if there was nothing happening, but and they made it so. It was just, again, it was a seamless presentation, and they were scrambling like crazy to get everything pulled together. So she's a treasure. Dylan and the whole crew are. Okay, back to the agenda. Any visitors' comments?
We have no,
None?
that I'm aware of, no.
None received.
Then to the finance reports, Finance and Facilities Director.
Okay. Well, first page shows the tax revenue. I finished the
whole fiscal year, $16.58 billion received. That's 3.3% higher than a year ago. Clay County is about $1 million higher than last year. It's 5.8% higher. Jackson County is just $120,000 higher and 0.4%. But we had a callback for $277,000. Otherwise, the increase would be 1.5% for Jackson County. Platte County, we had a close to $1 million tax revenue. That's 7.8% increase. Also, we estimated the amount of tax receivable, the delinquent tax, owed to the library. At the end of the year, we think would be close to $2.3 million in delinquent tax. That's 30% increase from a year ago. The total amount of operating revenue is $55.6 million. That's 5% increase. The next page is the operating expenditures. We spent about $30.4 million, or 93% of the budget on payroll and benefits. For library materials, we spent about $10.4 million. That's 90% of the budget. All other operational accounts is close to $8.2 million, 80% of the budget. For the whole fiscal year, revenue over expenditure is about $6.8 million. And also, during the year, we transferred $5.5 million to capital projects fund. We also, we're leaving a operating fund balance for $30 million. $27 million out of the $30 million fund balance. The next page is the assessment. We received the preliminary assessment for all three counties. The final assessment will come in late August. If we look at county by county, in Jackson County, the total assessment is a little over $9 billion, 10% increase from a year ago. Clay County, that's over $5 billion, 17% increase from a year ago. Platte County is about $3.2 billion, 12% increase. The total amount of assessment is over $17.3 billion, 12% increase from a year ago. New construction is over $320 billion. That's 120% increase from a year ago. Well, because it's not a final assessment, I really can't tell how what the tax rate would be for the new fiscal year. My estimate is going to be maybe between 34 cents to 35 cents. Last year, 36.96 cents. Even with 34 cents, we may still have 3.5% increase in tax revenue.
Because of new construction, is that?
New construction and inflation. Inflation is about 1.4%.
Okay.
New construction is, would give us a 2.5%.
New construction is not, is not affected by the rollback, is that?
That's correct. The next one, service fund. Right in the middle, middle section shows the total amount of interest from Bank of Kansas City. That's $110,286. The interest from Texas is $3.5 million. We also received a reimbursement over $64.3 million, leaving a cash balance of $19.3 million. And at the At the bottom of the page, it shows the debt balance at year end. It's close to $60.7 million in the balance. The next one is the capital project. Two projects we worked on. The first one is for Woolies Historical Home. We spent about $1.7 million for the project. And for capital improvement, it's about $26.4 million. The fund balance at the year end is about $44 million. Next one is the grant and gift.
Yeah. You hit me right here? Yeah. Okay, great. Have a good night.
Next one is gift and grant fund. During the fiscal year, we worked on 35 grants and projects. And we received total funding for $525,000. And we spent about $346,000, leaving a cash balance about $428,000. The next one is the health insurance fund. The total amount of contributions from both employer and employees is about $3.82 million. The budget is 3.8, so we were right on the target. On the expenditure side, the fixed costs, excess fee, and reinsurance is about $934,000. The budget is $850,000. Medical claims is about $2.8 million. The budget is $2.75 million. Total expenditure exceeded the budget by $144,000. But at the end of the fiscal year, we still had a small surplus, about $82,689. The cash on hand is over $1.7 million. The fund reserve is about $1.47 million. That $1.47 million is the total amount of cost savings we have realized since 2011. The minimum fund reserve required is a little over $1 million. And the maximum allowed is $1.5 million for 2022. We are just right below the maximum amount of balance. The last one is the quarterly investment report. For operating investment, we had $18 million in U.S. Treasury and agency bills, and $12.7 million in money market. The report shows both market value and a cost basis. The market value is the market price on June 30th. Our financial report needs to reflect the market value. And because of the increase in interest rate, most of the U.S. Treasury and agency bills we purchased was during the November and December last year. And the rate was about 0.7 to 0.8%. But in June 2021, the rate increased to 1.4%. So the market value dropped below the cost basis. Our report, June 30th financial report needs to reflect the market price. And I believe the market price will come back close, especially when we're getting close to the maturity. For capital investment, we invest most of them longer than a year, close to 5 years. So the market value is 26.9 versus the cost basis, 26.6. And the money market is $74,881. That's my report for the month.
Thank you. Any questions or?
Yeah, would you review again the delinquencies and what is our estimate of effect on the collections for the for this fiscal year
Okay.
as a result of higher, what it sounded to me like very much higher delinquency expectations,
Yes.
which is not surprising. I mean, I don't think should be surprise anybody.
Usually, the current tax, we can collect about 95 to 97% of current tax. And the delinquent tax, the total amount of delinquent tax, I believe, is close to $3 million. It only shows a receivable for past 5 years, because anything beyond 5 years, the chance of to collect. And the increase, yes, is due to the reassessment in 2019. You had a big jump in the delinquent tax. Also, like a Platte County still have a big outstanding unsettled tax amount with the utility companies, merge of Missouri gas company.
Okay.
That's still unresolved. So we see a 13% increase. And the collection rate on those receivable is about 40 to 60%.
Okay. Would you see that having any significant effect on our total revenue expectations?
Less than 1%.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
This is Lori Lemunion. I just have a quick question. So when they do, like, I know in Clay County, they do the tax sales on delinquent taxes. They do that sale in August. Will that money be recouped, some of that after that time, or is that something that the county doesn't have to pay?
Our cutoff date is July the 1st. Anything we collected before July the 1st, we count as current year tax. After that is the delinquent tax. So, yeah, the revenue in August will be counted as delinquent tax towards the tax receivable.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, if I heard you correctly, you were saying that about history of the collections on these things that go on more than 2 or 3 years is that we collect about 40 to 50% of the delinquencies, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Each year, about 40 to 50% will come back to the library.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Then let's go on to old business or unfinished business. The first matter is the building committee report.
Michael, are you there? You can give the report. Yes, okay. So, I'm not sure what screen we're on here. Let me push back here. Sorry about that. You caught me off guard. So, I guess we have the capital improvement plan status. Is that where we should start?
Yes.
Right on the dashboard. Cody, will you advance the slide? There you go.
Okay. So, appears that I'm on the wrong slide. So So the dashboard is the thing. And again, I apologize. I was not on the right screen. So is that, Brent, is that what we want to go over, is the dashboard?
I think the dashboard is there. I mean, there's nothing particularly new
new.
about it. I mean, if people have questions about a particular project, I think we would be happy to take the questions.
There's one point that I'd like to point out, something new that we added to the dashboard to point out to
Okay.
everybody. So
All right.
if you see, after midway, there's sort of a break in the dashboard, and then there's a new set of columns where the top part is black. And then there's a new column in there that says change. And I think this is an important column to draw to your attention, because what this change column actually shows essentially is positive or negative variance in the closed out account. So when you get down to the bottom, one of the things that you notice is 62% is actually reflecting 62% of everything done. But you can see in work package 1, we say this is savings. This is change is actually a savings column, if you will. So $160,000 saved in work package 1, $77,000 changed in work package 2, and so on. So there's some considerable saving. It's an easy way for you to see just quickly on how much in actual dollars we saved on the GMP versus the target, and actual, once we actually paid the bills. So, yeah, thank you, Michael. Thank you for letting me point that out.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. That really clarifies things. So looking down that column at the invoice price of $52,677,299, then showing a 62% change in the savings on each one of those. You add those all up. So yeah, any other questions on the dashboard? There would be.
We can go to the next slide, Cody, or do the what's the status update.
Yeah, so the get that slide up here. So that would be the yeah, my slides aren't tracking. There we go. So what we did last month, we had the Lee Summit branch. That was May 2021. Lee Summit closed, and the Coburn Road, we had the soft opening on May 26, 2021. Woodneath Homestead project, and that was one of the things that we went to see on our tour. Walls and ceilings being painted, carpet and flooring being done. And so that was quite an exciting tour of that particular project, and things are moving right along. Next slide, Colburn Road. Book opening was June the 11th, 2021. And I wasn't able to attend that. I don't know who all here was, but I was there several times prior to that. Anybody else? Was anybody there?
Oh, yeah.
That place is a fabulous, fabulous place. I think you would all have to agree. Any other comments on Colburn Road?
This is Joycelyn. Colburn is very well received by the community. It's very well used. Every time I pass by it, the parking lot's at least half full. Have heard nothing but rave reviews from the community about it. And I believe it's one of the most well thought out branches so far. I'm looking forward to some of the other new branches that come out of all of this.
Thank you, Joycelyn. Yeah, it's an astounding place. So if you haven't been, just take a drive out to Colburn Road and check that out. I was astounded, I guess, just even before the opening one, I went out and looked at it myself. I just happened to be in Lee's Summit, so I made a tour of all the buildings while I was there. And so I thought, well, I'll stop by there. And they were, very busy, obviously, trying to get that thing finished. So, yeah, it looks wonderful. So, next package, Woodneath Auditorium, continue construction. I think we have some slides coming up on that, if I'm not mistaken. And then the Blue Ridge, there's progress being made on the Blue Ridge construction. And I think there's some slides for that one as well. The Woodneath Homestead final touch-up and punch at the end of June. And it seems like there was, Steve, as far as the elevator issue, do we need to talk about that?
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. The elevator, we need to, at some point, and this is just a heads up for everybody, and this will come through the committee and we'll get it all squared away. But at some point, we need to do a budget allocation for the Woodneath elevator. There are funds to pay for the elevator, but it hasn't been allocated in any account for spending. Sort of an accounting thing that we need to make sure that we do. So staff will bring that forward in an upcoming meeting. And the elevator is actually running a little bit behind. Some of it's dealing with supply chain issues relative to COVID. So we have an elevator shaft. There's a door that you open in the Woodneath house, and if you're not careful, you can drop 2 stories. So we're getting, it's there, but it's a little behind schedule in terms of getting all the parts. It'll probably be this fall before we actually get everything installed. We do not believe that is going to prevent us from occupying the space. We believe that we can get a temporary occupancy, staff upstairs, and as long as we don't book the upstairs rooms for the public, we should be safe as far as life safety. So it shouldn't prevent us from moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. We did look down that shaft when we were out there. Yeah, it was quite a sight.
It's a drop.
It's a huge drop. So anyway, then what's coming up next month has already happened. And so July 15th, 2021, a groundbreaking ceremony did take place in the rain. Personally, I was very shocked and surprised at the number of people that showed up at the groundbreaking, and it was a great time, I believe, and the community came out to really support what was going on, and the construction, clearing the ground and getting everything ready to go, they're moving right along. So what a great asset that building and that property is going to be to the community surrounding and to the whole library system. So any comments, questions on that?
It was an exciting day.
Michael was very well spoken. That's what I would add.
I don't know about that, but it was an honor and privilege to just be there and partake and help launch the groundbreaking. It's always exciting to have the shovels in your hand and the hard hat sitting on your head. It's pretty good. And of course, Kansas City Mayor was there, and Senator Luke Meyer was there, and yeah, quite a number of people showed up for that. And like I said, I was surprised because when it's raining, you have a vision in your mind. It's like, who's going to show up? And I think the tent was pretty full, wasn't it, Steve?
Yeah, there was maybe only 1 or 2 seats left once we started the ceremony. So
great, very good. So I think that's The,
I think we've got some photos. Here we go.
oh yeah, we need to do the photos. Right.
So I'll go and take this, Michael, and kind of
Yeah, go ahead.
describe what we're looking at. So this is the
Absolutely.
Woodneath Auditorium. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, this is the front of the auditorium. And if you look closely, you can see that there's glass in there. So the storefront glass has been installed at the Woodneath Auditorium. A lot of the drywall work has been done. Of course, all sealed up. And so they are moving right along. There's the target is still before the end of the calendar year, and despite all the rain and everything, it sure looks like they're going to make it. So the next slide is Blue Ridge, and you can see quite a lot of work has been going on at Blue Ridge, building an entry plaza and updating the entry area. Doing a lot of parking lot work there. The parking lot has been a consistent issue at that branch ever since it was originally built. And so you can see we're really trying to address the parking lot for once and for all. They've got all of the new light fixtures in place, and some of the programming room is built out, and some of the other interior stuff. So the interior is looking good. The picture right there in the middle is the elevator. There is a basement in Blue Ridge. But there never was an elevator there. And so one of the things we've been doing, and because Blue Ridge was on a different timetable than Woodneath, the elevator is actually moving along there. We actually have the elevator in that case. And so but the idea was to kind of future-proof the building a little bit. So even though we don't have plans to use the basement for public space today, while we are interrupting the building and the service, we put an elevator in so that in the future, 10, 15 years from now, if we do want to start using the basement for some reason, we can do so. So that's Blue Ridge, and moving right along. Next picture is the groundbreaking. It was really a lot rainier than it looks like in those pictures. But that's all of us turning the dirt and all of the pictures there. I did, for those of you who were curious, I did take my shoes somewhere special to get them cleaned after the groundbreaking. It was a little muddy, but it was a great day. And as Michael said, they have not let, as you can really even clearly see from this picture, they've got the site, that's the pad site to build the building that we're setting on there. Already sort of graded out, pretty much ready to start laying out the building pad right now. J.E. Dunn had already started procuring materials for the building, and so they've got a lot of that ready to go. Our target is about a year, and we'll see how it all works out. But they've had no problems procuring the materials to keep things going. I think that's the last of the images. Yeah.
Michael, this is Brent. Just a couple of quick comments. Back on the dashboard, I added up all the savings in the change column, and it's about $470,000. And that's significant because we, deep into the project, about 62,000. For the benefit of the board that is not on the building committee, North Oak is going out to bid. Michael Huey, one of the architects, mentioned. And so that will be an important project because it's the first project we've had that may show some of these construction material costs. And so if that comes in good, that will be a point to celebrate and cheer. It's something to keep our eyes on. And then we're still working through a possible land acquisition in Green Valley, but there's nothing really to report to the board because there's nothing to report to the board. And so this is a topic that the building committee has talked about 2, if not 3 times, I think. And that's a piece of business that we will pick up probably in the fall.
Well, actually, we need to pick that up in a closed session tonight.
Okay.
Well, I stand readily corrected, and hang on, we'll have more to report here.
Okay.
Report. Any other questions or comments for the committee?
A question about Lee Summit Library. It was closed, I think, 2 weeks ago?
It's been closed for a little while, yes.
Yeah, and there's no sign of, maybe I'm missing something, but there's no sign of any activity around there at
There's
all.
very little activity going on because of how our 3-card monte that we were playing in Lee Summit, where we opened, we built Eastleigh Summit, took the collection from from Colburn Road, put it over there.
Yeah.
And now, and then moved all of that back to Colburn Road, then moved Colburn Road, Lee Summit to Eastleigh Summit so that they could get open. There ended up being a little bit of a gap. And so we're just waiting. We're just waiting for the mobilization and everything, but
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you have a date when you believe it will start?
my guess is Jake is going to send me a text message in the next few minutes and tell me. And if I get that date, I will pass that to you, John.
Yeah, that's good enough. Thank you.
Steve, this is Steve Rowling. I see Red Bridge is open.
Yes.
All the chemicals have been moved out into the middle of the parking lot of our neighbor. So I assume all the mouse problems are solved.
You never say never, Steve, but yeah, I mean, the landlord, Lane 4, did a great job advocating for us and advocating with Houston's Hardware. We have not seen, any issues in terms of the infestation since our previous meeting. All is well.
Thank you.
More questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the Finance Committee.
Okay.
John?
Well, Finance Committee's happy to know that Mouse Gate is behind us, other things. Okay, the report I have is related to one action item, and it's a bit unusual, so I want to explain a little bit about it. And it relates to the Health Insurance Reserve Fund, and Kwan went over that, and on page 21 of your agenda, you can see again those figures with regard to no, I got the wrong. No, 21. Yeah, the Health Insurance Fund on page 21. If you want to look again at what's happening with the reserve fund now. I think by now everybody's familiar with that fund and the fact that it's been very successful at holding at predicting what our costs will be and at providing the revenue that will be necessary to meet those costs. It's really called a cost plus plan, although we call it various things, self-insurance program and so forth, but it's the cost plus plan. And the way the plan works is to transfer all health insurance revenues from the operating fund to the insurance reserve fund, to the health insurance reserve fund, and then trust that the revenues of the first fiscal year plus the transferred reserves will cover our next fiscal year health expenses. So last year's budget estimated 3.8 million in revenue and 3.6 million in health expenses. The health expenses, as it turns out, were up by almost $200,000 from what was expected. The probable reason for that is the fact that a lot of medical procedures were delayed during the COVID issue, and so when the skies opened a little bit, why people went out like I did, as a matter of fact, to go to doctors and get some tests done that you probably should have had done earlier and so forth. So that's probably the main reason why that $200,000 is up. And so even though we have plenty of money, as you can see from page 21, to operate next year, unless there's some cataclysmic change in the expense pattern, we think we're in good shape for next year. But that leaves the fact that we have a budget, last year's fiscal year budget, which misstates the the revenue that we will, the expenses that we estimated. And we know the reason why that's the case. It turns out that the only people that can correct that issue to the satisfaction of the auditors are the board, because the board is the only one that can approve interfund transfers of that type. And I think this is an odd thing, but Quan assures me it's really not. It's a necessary accounting action that has to be taken, and has been done on certain accounts in the past, which were under the control of the board only to make transfers on. So we took some steps to get that information out to the members of the committee, and offered to have a special meeting before this meeting, but it wasn't necessary because everyone indicated that they understood that and would approve it. So with that, I will make a motion. And I'm going to make a slight change in the motion as it's written here, because I think it's an important one, although well, I think it's important. Here's the motion. Staff recommends a motion to adjust the health insurance reserve fund operating expenses by $200,000 from 3.6 million to 3.8 million in fiscal year 2021 budget, and keep the revenue line at 3.8 million. So we would be adjusting the 2021 budget, and that would be the action that we would take. So on behalf of the Finance Committee, I would recommend and make the motion that adjustment be made as requested.
Now, technically, this doesn't come as a recommendation from committee because the committee didn't meet. I mean, the committee all reviewed it, but they didn't meet. So we will still need a second.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that's right. Okay. So we do need a second. I will make the motion as chairman of the committee.
I
And
second this, Steve.
Steve Rowling seconds.
It's been moved and seconded that we have the motion as presented on the visual as adjusted by John. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstaining? Passed.
Okay, thank you very much. Just one other thing, and that is the audit. One of the main functions of the Finance Committees is to supervise the audit on behalf of the board, and the audit has started. I've heard from the managing partner today, who is, continuing to manage the this year's audit. And so we had the usual preliminaries of, what do you need to know and what do we need to know and so forth. So we had a good discussion a little while ago, and so the audit has officially begun. Okay, that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Fundraising and Development Committee reports.
This is Brent Schonemeyer on the fundraising development. I'm going to try to go through 3 action items fairly quickly. The great pleasure. We had frankly not met since January 3rd, 2020. And this actually followed the Green Hills, and we went over to Woodneath, and all the committee members were present, either in person or online. We were disrupted by a thunderstorm at the end, but we got through all our business. So these are really perfunctory matters, but they do require board action. So the first one is a transfer from the Truman Heartland Community Foundation of funds that we have for the Story Center. We have several different accounts at the Truman Heartland Community Foundation. I think the number is 15. This particular fund is MIDC 05, and the current balance is $14,725. And the idea, these were funds that were collected on behalf of Woodneath. We want to transfer them over to complete the Woodneath campaign. So the motion, this comes from the committee. There's a motion to the board to transfer $14,725.76 from the Truman Heartland Community Foundation Story Center Fund to the MCP Capital Project Fund to be used for the expenses of the Woodneath House project. So that comes from the committee as a recommendation to the full board.
So was that your motion?
it's motion from a committee, so
Okay.
just open for discussion.
Okay, any discussions? Questions for Brent? Okay, do we need a motion specific or in addition to that?
No,
Okay.
just call the question, just a vote.
Okay, let's have this matter to vote. All in favor of this motion as presented, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
The second action also relates to Woodneath, and there's a board policy that requires naming rights be approved, a naming of rooms be done by board action. This is really a thoughtful process that's done by our staff. They came through with the recommendation. This also comes as a recommendation for the committee. So the name spaces, I'm just going to read them for the purposes of the record. It's the William T. Kemper Foundation, main entry and staircase. The Crouch family, the reading room. Edward Sweeney Trust, Bank of America trustee, the program room 1. Edward Sweeney Trust, Bank of America trustee, program 2. City of Independence, Missouri, conference room.
Kansas City, Missouri.
Kansas City, Missouri. Okay, conference room. Dan and Wanda Odell, the Odell Family Foundation, the Memorial Garden. Dr. Christian and Ann Sizemore, the elevator. There was a thought, so this is a motion that comes from the committee, thoughtful discussion about that. Other people made sufficient contributions that they were offered the right for naming rights. Other people over a certain amount will be named in the front hallway. And so, but we need specific board approval for these designated spaces to be named for the parties who provided the necessary funds.
So, discussion.
Any questions or comments for Brent? I was just curious, are the people selected by virtue of a combination of financial contributions or a general community?
Dollar amount.
Of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I should also say that there were people who said they did not want to be so recognized, even though they were eligible to be recognized. There are a lot of charitable institutions that don't care to receive that recognition. They're doing it for other reasons.
Good. Any other questions, comments? Okay, all in favor of this moving forward on this resolution, please signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstaining? It's passed.
I'm going to interject here. Actually, the Woodneath campaign was about a $3 million campaign, and the campaign is closed. When I came on the board, this was an unimaginable sort of activity. The board actually took the view that the Story Center, the historic building, was a preservation project, and it really was deserving and could achieve and obtain private and community support. So congratulations to all those involved. We got a National Endowment for Humanities grant. We got money from the Kansas City, Missouri PIAC or their TIF project. There was a community-based fundraising campaign. There were events that were held up there. We're in the process of raising $100,000 for an endowment as a condition of our grant. So while these were nominal 14,000 transactions and namings, they don't reflect the entirety of what has really sort of transpired at Woodneath. And so, frankly, I had a chance to meet Lori and Noel, the two new Clay County MCP trustees that if I had bumped into them in the grocery store, I would not recognize them. So it was great to see there. And so this was kind of a day to pause and celebrate, and I just wanted to say that. And it doesn't require any emotion, but it requires some level of acknowledgement and gratitude for everybody who kind of made this part, happen. So I want that, reflected in the minutes because it's really important in our own history is that we completed a major project at the level of $3 million. The last action item is that in the course of the Woodneath campaign, there was a recognition that we needed to form our own foundation. Some people would only give to the foundation, even though our governmental entity, McConnell Public Library, could accept funds. So we have created a foundation. That foundation it's a separate legal entity. It has its own separate attorney. It has its own separate board. There were some members of the current trustee boards who were on it with other sort of community members. And this was an important kind of point of governance, is that we wanted a foundation that would be supportive of the library. In the world of library lands, there are legendary stories about how friends organizations went awry and went rogue. And then first thing you know, something that was intended to be support got in a different sort of direction. But as a matter of governance and as a matter of good practice, is that there is a memorandum of understanding. I think it's in your material that outlines the relationship between the foundation and the Independent Public Library Board. So it is pretty straightforward. It talks about what kind of support that the foundation, the library will provide to the foundation. Understand our activities are not significant at this point. We met recently. Our current bank account is less than $20,000. But at one point, because we had the foundation, we were able to receive $100,000. And so over time, this is something that would sort of grow. And so I say that by way of background, but we have approved a memorandum of understanding every year that the foundation exists. This is for all substantive purposes is the same document. So this comes as a recommendation from the committee, and the motion is to approve the memorandum of understanding between Mid-Continent Public Library and the Mid-Continent Public Library Foundation, Inc.
Good. Thank you, Brett. Any questions, comments? Okay, let's call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstaining? It's passed.
One other quick comment, the foundation actually provided a match for the Giving Tuesday for the Wi-Fi, spots. Actually, that went really well. I thought, there was a sense that we might raise 6,000, 3,000,
Yeah.
3,000, and we raised 16, 17,000. I think you heard a board report, but the foundation provided a match. And I think the match sometimes can be helpful in people sort of contributing to it. Oh, if I give $100, well, then that's really $200. And so you're going to see probably a more active on the part of the foundation. Frankly, it was good for the development committee to get together. Our staff has been very, very active. They have some goals and metrics for the year. At some point, at a later point, when we're all maybe gathered in person, it might be good just to have a presentation from them about what their activities are. They're well disciplined and they do lots of things. They recently did the Legacy Luncheon. I got an email while we're sitting here about the Legacy Luncheon. About $25,000 were raised in revenue, great sponsorships. There were some great videos. It's always a wonderful event, but really a lot better when it's in person. And so I think we're headed back to that. And I think Steve may share something from that later on in the meeting. So that's the report from the Fund Development Committee.
Thank you, Brent. The librarian's report.
I have 4 items. Let's see, I have 3 items that I want to talk about personally. But before I get to those, it is the board meeting after the end of a quarter, which means it's time for our quarterly statistics report. And of important this time, of course, is that this is our end of the year. So this is actually going to go back and tell us a little bit about how things looked in fiscal year 2021. So Katina, I presume that you're on the line and you're ready to go.
I am, and yes, I am. So thank you for that. So as Steve said, this report I'll touch a little bit on the last quarter, April, May, June, but talk mostly about how we did this fiscal year as a whole. So if we go to the next slide. So just as a reminder, in this current strategic plan, we are, the way that we are measuring mission fulfillment, or our core measures are active cardholders, active customers, folks actually using their card at the library, customer satisfaction, and then customer transactions or customers using library services. So with that in mind, if we go to the next slide, I wanted to sort of go back and remind you where we've come as far as I decided to call it service interruptions, right? Where we started with COVID and how the services we were providing or not providing then affected the numbers that we're going to look at today. Does that make sense? So if we think back to last fiscal year, it was that third and fourth quarter, mostly the fourth quarter, that was really affected with service interruptions. And I'm not going to read everything, but in March 2020 is when the branches closed and our customers had digital access to the library only. It wasn't until May that we started curbside service for physical materials. And then in June, we allowed customers to come in and use, technology services is how we described it. They were able to use public computers, printers, fax, copy machines, that sort of thing. But so we started this current the fiscal year we just finished, providing curbside service and technology services. So if we go to the next slide, it was then in November that we had to curbs, our services again significantly. We went back to only curbside services in November. And then we also began abbreviated hours of operation. So Q2 of this most recently completed fiscal year, we really had to dial back the services we were offering. So then it was January of this calendar year where we returned technology services. So customers were allowed again to come back into our branches to use computers or print, fax, copy, right? And then we added in February in-branch browsing. So folks are able to quickly, come in and do a little, we called it, I just forgot the word that I used and I changed it to in-branch. But in other words, we in Q3 of this current, most recently completed fiscal year, we had more customers coming back in. So then we went all the way to May before we returned our hours that we had adjusted back in December. And we also opened collaboration rooms. So again, more opportunities for customers to come in, restoring some of our services. And so it wasn't until June that we returned our normal hours of operation. So we ended this fiscal year still not having large gatherings in our libraries, whether that's in-person programming or use of our large meeting spaces, but all the other services had returned. So the one thing that you'll notice is we went 11 full months before we allowed customers to come back in themselves and browse our branches. And I think that shows as we'll sort of go through and look at the data. So if we go to the next slide. So again, active customers, we're talking about market penetration, how many households within our library district actually have active cards, new card registrations, and then customer retention. How many people a year after getting a library card are still using their card, right? So all of those things are considered when we're thinking about active customers. The next slide, please. So this chart really, again, you've got your descriptor there on the left. We're looking at how we ended June 30, 2021. So that's the Q4 fiscal 2021 number. And then the change from last quarter. So how does April, May, June compare to January, February, March? And then if you remember, it was that fourth quarter of 2020, which is what's in the column on the far right, is where we had, is where we started the process of really abbreviating our services. So our current active cardholders as of June 30 is 236,000 people are actively using their cards. That's 2.8% higher than last quarter, but about 27% fewer than the same time last year. And as you'll see there, our goal was to get to 320. We're moving in the right direction. New card registration. We had 9,500 new cards made in a Q4, so April, May, June of this year. That's 36% more than the previous quarter and 74% more than the year before, which makes sense, right? Branches were totally closed. The only way people could work with us was digitally. So we were getting people signing up online for cards, but that not being able to do that in person is really shown here in these numbers. Market penetration number. As of June 30, we had 36% of our households had at least one active card in them. That's up 1 point from last quarter, and it's down 7 points from before, which follows, when you're looking at us being down about 27% active cardholders from this time last year. Cardholder retention, so people who signed up for a card 12, at least a year or more ago, 37% of them are still using their cards, which is up 2 points from last quarter, but it's down 12 points from this time last year. And if we go to the next line where we're talking about active student accounts, you really could see there in that bottom right corner, before 100% of our student counts were either new or, were currently being used. So in other words, we had all of those student accounts and lots of new schools that became a part of the program. So that affects our cardholder retention, that affects our market penetration. Now that we are counting it, now that we've had years go past with student accounts, and again, that affects, like I said, that affects the numbers from last year. So active student accounts as of June 30, 61% of the cards were either new or actually being used, and it was 58% at the end of March. So that 57.7%. So the next slide then sort of talks a little bit more. It's, two charts that are kind of busy, but what you want to look at is the green bars in each chart represents our library compared to other libraries in our budget category or other libraries in our population category that also use Savannah. And then the orange bar in each of these charts represents all the libraries that use Savannah, right? So our peers that are using the Orange Boy data visualization service, you can see there. So again, Q2 of 2021, we're at 36% of active cardholders, active households, market penetration. And then you'll see on the next chart for cardholder retention, we're at 37%, which we talked about in the previous slide. But our peers, are definitely less than 25% in Q2 of 2021 on peers that are in our budget category, peers that also have a similar population to what we have. And then across the Savannah platform, 22% of the active households, of the households have active cards. When it comes to cardholder retention, our peers are a little bit closer to us related to that. You'll see that 31% of the libraries on the Savannah platform, 31% of the libraries in our population category that's how much they're retaining people who got a card a year or more ago. So this is, I've used this before in my presentation, and it really just gives you an idea of where we are compared to other libraries that are similar to us. Okay, next slide, please. So let's talk about customer satisfaction. Again, this is something we often talk about. We've got our Net Promoter Score survey that goes out, and then we also regularly survey customers after they participate in our programs, right? So the next slide will show you then, it's just a reminder of, how the Net Promoter Score works. The question that we ask is on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend that others use Mid-Continent Public Library? Of course, there are people who are very literal that say, I'm not talking to anybody, so I haven't recommended the library. But then we have lots of other comments that come in that people truly appreciate the fact that the library was available during, the height of the pandemic, that they were able to, either access the library online or, use curbside service. So we hear from customers with a lot of positive comments for this. So if people rate us a 9 or a 10, they're considered a promoter. If they give us a rating of 6 or below, they're a detractor. They're also asked if we can follow up with them and ask what we can do to make their experience better. So it really is a way for us to have these conversations and talk directly with our customers. It is only emailed, so it's something to really consider in the future, how we can gather that sort of feedback from customers who we may not have their email address, or they may not feel comfortable answering this type of survey online. So the next slide then gives us the actual numbers. The baseline when we started this strategic plan was 91.8. We wanted to get to 92. Right now we are at 89.9. So, again, we're hovering right there at 90. We started a new cycle of the Net Promoter Score survey just in September, so it hasn't been quite a year yet, but we've had 3,100 customers respond to the survey. So we've gotten a lot of feedback. That word cloud there, the large words are the ones that we expect, right? That, books and that we have friendly staff, helpful staff, people love the library, it's easy to access it, all those sorts of things. So again, and I think we talked about it time I presented, the larger the word, the more often people use it. And then that final bullet point on this page is that 97% of people who filled out a post-program survey rated those virtual library programs as very good or excellent. So I think we got about 700 or so program responses this past quarter. And so, like I said, 97% of those said that, they really enjoy the program that they participate in. So next slide, please. So the final section that I wanted to sort of talk to you through is, customer transactions. How are people using the library? If we go to the next slide. This one just, I show this one every time, but, this one actually has the actual numbers on it. Our goal for the actual transactions, total transactions we had last fiscal year was 11.3 million. And that's recognizing that last quarter of last fiscal year was, totally not our highest, our usual level of service being provided. So our goal for this fiscal year, 2021, was 9 million. And our actual is 9.8 million. So when Jim and I worked through we worked through the goal for this, and we literally looked at what we had done in 2020. We thought about the fact that we were going to open Coburn Road. The construction would be done on Parkville and South Independence and Grandview. And so, I felt like we were modest. It was about the goal that we set for 2021 was about 70% of the previous year's goal. And so the fact that we got about 78% of the previous year's goal, I think is definitely says a lot about how our customers were still able, a good number of our customers are still able to use the library as they saw fit over this fiscal year with all the things that we went through. So next slide, please. So this slide, it's gray because it's just the quarter. It's not that I'm trying to, hide these numbers from you, but April, May, June of 2021, we had 2.7 million transactions in this quarter. You can see that, our circulation of physical and digital items was up 15.5% from last quarter, up almost 70% from the quarter before, which makes sense, right? Because, people could only use us digitally last year, this time. Virtual resources is down about 19% from last quarter. And I really think that that's just related to, students using and, and the use of the student use going down, but it's up about 3% from that same time last year. Internet accesses up 81% from last quarter, which makes sense, right? Because we just had people starting to come back and use our public computers. And then it's up, a whole 333% from last year. We weren't even open we had 2 weeks of technology services in this time last year. So program attendance is up 22% from last quarter and also 22% from the year before. And then use of physical resources, which is, reference questions and actually using our community rooms, is up 108% from last quarter, and then up 66% from the quarter before. So I wonder if that number's right. Anyway, just a thought. So like I said, 2.7 million transactions this past quarter, which is up 8% from last quarter and 53% from this time last year. So then if we look at the fiscal year numbers on the next slide, you can see that, what's the difference between 9.8 million and 11.3 million? We are, this year, we're down about 9% from last year. So about 700 or so thousand circulations from last fiscal year. Our use of virtual resources we were 2.3 million this year. It was 2.6 million last year, which is about 8.3% less. So then, then we start getting into internet access, right? We had a lot fewer months when people could come in and use public computers. So we're down about 54% from last fiscal year. Our program attendance, that's the biggest, the biggest percent change, right? But, it's about 200,000, 210,000 fewer people attending programs because we are still we did virtual programs throughout the entire fiscal year. And then the physical resources, again, we had a very small amount of time where people were actually able to come in and schedule collaboration rooms, and also no time where people were using our large meeting rooms. So again, 9.8 million compared to 11.3 million, it's about 13% decrease in total transactions this fiscal year compared to the last fiscal year. The next slide just gives you an idea, just sort of a graphic representation. And again, if you think back to, when I was sort of going through what we were looking at, I started it in July just to sort of give you a fiscal year rundown. The darkest green represents the most recent fiscal year. That one in the middle is last fiscal year. So you can see April, May, June significantly, a decrease again, because we were only providing digital services and only had 2 weeks of people actually in our branches using technology services. So again, just a graphic representation of what we've talked about so far. And I think my last slide gives you just a little bit about some of our data points from grants that we've had this fiscal year. So we did Grower Reader to Go Storytime kits. So in other words, they were kits that had, a book and some whether it was shakers or scarves or something like that, and an activity or instruments, sorry. So maybe tambourines, that sort of thing. These Grower Reader to Go Storytime kits were initially, put together for like daycares to use, right? But it was one of those things where we lucked out that we had them available. They were in the catalog, and so families could check them out and do story time at home. And so we had 60 kits in the catalog, and we've checked out 276 of them to date. So pretty much about November until the end of the fiscal year, we had 276 checkouts. So, and that was something that we were able to purchase those and supplement what we already had with LSTA funds that comes from the state library through IMLS. And then we added Wi-Fi access points so that people could, use our Wi-Fi from the parking lot. And so last fiscal year, we had 123,000 Wi-Fi sessions. 43% of them were on those access points that were pointing out to our parking lot. And as you can imagine, our peaks in parking lot use were from December to February, when we had gone from having people in person to going back to just curbside service. So respectively, we had 67% of the Wi-Fi sessions in the parking lot in December, 61 in January, 55% in February. And then the last thing that I wanted to sort of bring to your attention related to, the access points were also CARES funding we used to purchase those. And then finally, the Wi-Fi to Go service, which is actually checking out a hotspot. We have purchased hotspots. I think now we have about 400 or so, but the checkouts between February and the end of June, nearly 1,700 checkouts of those Wi-Fi hotspots. And of those folks surveyed, 61% they said that they used the hotspot for school projects or work projects. And an additional question, 74% of them said that they used it to improve connectivity at home or while they were traveling. So whether or not they were out someplace doing a work project or they were going camping and wanted to have Wi-Fi while they were there. So that's it's a very small number of people who've actually filled out the survey. But I think that sort of gives us an idea of how people are using those hotspots. So that concludes my report for the month.
Thank you. As I said, just a treasure of information. Steve, did you have more for your report?
I do. I do have a couple of things just real quick before I transition into and mine should go my actual verbal report should go pretty quickly. The one thing that I always want to remind people, I've been saying this to the staff repeatedly as well. Remember that we really cannot benchmark off 2020. 2020 was such a weird year that we can't really effectively benchmark off that number. And I also don't think that we can effectively expect to snap back to 2019 overnight. It's going to take a while for people to be able to get comfortable coming back to using the library and using our resources. That said, if you remember what Katina called her busy bar chart slide, that was page 52. And Cody, we don't have to go back there. I'm just referencing it. I think it is important to take a look at that because even though we have had some challenges, obviously, if you compare us with our industry, with our peers, we are still performing very well, very, very well compared to our industry and our peers. And that's where we want to be. We're all sort of in the same fish tank, if you will, but I feel like we're doing pretty well compared to where we could be. And we certainly have a good place to grow from. So So shifting away from our statistics, I did want to mention, a couple weeks ago, we did have a career online high school graduation. There were 25 graduates from this program, and as you might remember, this is a program that is a collaboration between Mid-Continent Public Library, Kansas City Public Library, and Literacy Kansas City. And when you go through this program, you can actually receive a certified high school diploma with career training. I spoke with a couple of the graduates that were on their way into nursing, that had basically moved from a series of minimum wage jobs and now had a career. That it was real life-changing circumstances. Actually, the graduation, there were actually 50 total graduates. 25 of the graduates had graduated with a high set, and the other 25 had graduated through our program, the collaboration between Literacy Kansas City and the libraries. And just really feel like we're helping to make a real big difference. As you might remember, the average age, the average graduate age is about 29. So these aren't kids who, drop out of high school at 16 and 18 come back. These are folks who dropped out of high school, experienced life, realized life was not what they thought it was going to be, and we're able to help them kind of get a do-over, which is a really nice thing. Did want to mention the effective boards training that was earlier this month. I think it was last week. It was interesting. It was good. And certainly if you haven't signed up for that and are interested in signing up, let me know. They're doing those, I think, every month for the next couple or 3 months. The last thing that I wanted to share with the librarian's report is that every year about this time, I like to talk a little bit about the year in review, what we've done so far, halfway mark and all of that. And after I saw the summary that we put together for the Legacy Luncheon, I figured really that's about the best year in review that I could do. So I asked Cody to have that prepared just to show it to everybody in the event you hadn't seen the year in review yet. So Cody, when you're ready, go ahead and run that.
All right, just one moment. Let me get some things moved around. All right. And if you can't hear it, please let me know.
Bienvenidos! Welcome back.
Welcome back.
We missed you. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
We're happy to see you.
Hey, welcome back.
Well, welcome back. We missed you.
Oh, hey, welcome back to the library.
I think the most exciting thing over this past year is that we were able to try a lot of things that kind of showed us things that we could be doing and might be able to be doing. If we would have talked a year ago and said, what is it going to be like a year from now? I would have never been able to predict it. Of course, I don't think any of us would have been able to predict what 2020 and early 2021 felt like. But it's really very exciting because we're beginning to slowly see people become more comfortable and more accustomed to reconnecting in the ways that they used to. It's easier for me to tell you what services aren't available because really we've readapted and readopted as quickly as we could and as safely as we could. And the things that are really left right now, as we speak, we are working on getting our story times, our children's story times and our early literacy programming still up and running. And those, we're trying to correlate those with the beginning of the school year. And so hopefully we'll have the full slate of those, just like you were always used to seeing, right about the time the school year starts. The other one is the in-person programming, the face-to-face live programming that we do in our branches. We're able to pivot to virtual programming, and we're still doing a lot of that, but we are still working on getting that all up and going and running the way that it needs to. And so that'll come later in this calendar year. But other than that, If you used to do it in 2019 in our libraries, you can probably do it now. There's a running joke in the library profession that, something slightly unusual happens and you go, well, gosh, we never talked about that in library school. Well, I mean, that's all this last 18 months has been, just crisis management, dealing with stuff that we never in a million years would have expected. But almost the very first thing that we did is we realized that there are issues in our community with the digital divide and rural broadband, where if you live in certain areas, you can't get high-speed internet. And as all of our schools and our workplaces were saying, stay at home, connect to the internet, if you don't have the internet, you're in big trouble. So one of the very first things we did is we sort of ripped down some of our access points in our buildings, put them in our entryways so that we were broadcasting our Wi-Fi out into the parking lot. And that was just like a real quick solution. But we discovered, you drive by our branches like April a year ago, and you'd see people sort of hanging out in the parking lot. And that's what they were doing, is they were accessing that. So we actually got some CARES Act funding to actually get permanent high-speed internet that we put on the outside of all of our buildings. It's a permanent solution, 5G high-speed internet available in all of our parking lots from right outside our buildings. And that was one of the very, very first things that we did. Also in terms sort of along the same lines, Jackson County actually gave us some matching money for another CARES Act grant, which allowed us to buy personal Wi-Fi devices, Wi-Fi that people could check out. And same sort of situation where, again, people live in a digital divide, they can't really get access, so they could check this out. And so we launched that entire program, these Wi-Fi devices, and we've been growing that significantly through the pandemic, and it's something that's sticking around afterward. We also recently just got another grant where we're going to be checking out Chromebook computers to folks. We did the pivot to digital programming, and there's lots of other things, obviously. We did pumping up our digital downloads, our ebooks and e-audiobooks for people to do. Curbside pickup was another big thing that we did. That won't be going away soon. It's permanent. So some of this was discovery, and some of it was intentional, but maybe not this year. We were going to do it sometime, but decided to do it this year. We were able to carry on with our capital program. We didn't really accelerate our capital program. We just marched along as our partners were able to continue to get access to materials and contracts and contractors. And the big advantage of that is, we had to be closed anyway because of the stay-at-home orders, and we had to be, limited access anyway because of how everything was. I mean, that really is a true silver lining. But yeah, we do have three really interesting projects that opened during the pandemic. The three big ones that we really want to talk about, I think, in terms of that came online this year are Grandview and the Withers branch, formerly known as Liberty, as well as the new Colburn Road Library Center. So Colburn Road tore it down, started over, increased the visibility. We created three separate entrances on that building. So we have a partnership with Post Coffee. Actually, they run our North Independence Bistro as well as the Colburn Road Bistro. And they have their own separate entrance so they can open and get all those morning coffee drinkers before we open. We've got our main entrance, and then we've got our entrance for our Square One small business services. And then it's also got a lot of deliberate space. So there's deliberate teen space, collaborative space, there's a large programming room, story time room. There's also drive-up windows so that you can just drive up and drop your items off or pick up your items. So I was there about an hour after it opened, and it was already lots of people inside, lots of people using the space, and it's very exciting. It's already very well received, and it's less than a month old. Withers Library, which is the Liberty branch. And Withers, I think, is a really good experience of a design concept that we used, which I like to call bringing the outside in and the inside out. And so what happens when you go to the Withers branch, which you'll notice is the entire east side is glass. and you can see out into a field and a line of trees. And so it's just a really, really nice, calming, relaxing place that you can go. The other way that we sort of bring the outside in, it has a moss wall, which is a really nice sort of artistic feature, which is just really exciting. And so you begin to feel all of those positive things that you feel with nature when you're inside our building. But we also bring the inside out with this concept. So you can sit outside and you can have all the same internet access that you would have inside. You can borrow one of our laptop computers and sit outside. And I think Withers is a great example of that design concept. So our Grandview branch, basically what we did is we knocked off the front of the building and just built out to the curb. And in doing that, really both sides of the build out are glass. And so on one side of the glass is where our children's library is. But also there's all these glass walls and moving traffic and things that are exciting for kids to see. And then the other side of the front is where our community room is. And so what's ended up happening is we've been able to redesign the building, relay out the building. So even if you're sitting at the service desk, you feel like our staff feel like they've got better control over the building, a little bit more square footage so people don't feel like they're on top of each other, which is a good thing. But more importantly, it's just a beautiful building. I mean, its curb appeal is just something that, I mean, when you drive by, you're like, you know that this is a library now. And you can drive into that location and really it feels like what it really needed to be, which is sort of the heart of the community, a place where people can come and gather and collaborate and work together, whether it's for school projects or to build a better community. The biggest thing that I learned was that our staff are amazingly resilient, and that our staff are able to do all that they need to do to keep focused on providing the service, and that our staff are focused on people, that we are truly a mission-driven organization. And to me, that was one of the greatest lessons that I learned, that when our backs are against the wall, we're going to figure out how to pull together and to help make the community a better place. I do think in terms of librarianship in general, throughout the country, there are really, really good librarians, and that we all, early on, just put our heads down and tried to figure out, how do we make our community a better place? How do we make our community a safer place? How do we give people better information? And how do we help each other so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel? And that's what I just kept seeing over and over and over again. But the amazing thing is that we never lost sight of what it is we're supposed to be doing, which is helping fulfill that mission and fulfill that vision. So that was the video that we showed. That was a summary, sort of a summary of the last year. And like I told them is, you know, they should have tried to cast someone a little bit more photogenic to be the library director. But otherwise, I thought that it was a good summary of what we've been through over the last 12 months plus. So that concludes the librarian's report.
I'd just like to take about half a minute to comment on something that Steve mentioned, and that was the high school graduation program. I had a chance to visit the graduation maybe about 3 years ago at Woodneath, and everybody was there. The graduates and their families, you could tell, were from financially very humble backgrounds, but the sense of elation that you can't say kids, that the young adults had at graduating, and even to pick up the sense of pride that their typically young children had in most cases their moms graduating, was just beyond description. Incredibly outstanding program. And what's neat about that, it at least struck me, is that they were also, I'm sure, approached by many proprietary GED programs that, you know, are nowhere in the same universe as what's available. So anyway, that's just one of the many programs that are just wonderful. Okay, new business. We're going to be covering the North
Yeah.
Independence easement.
Right, I can go ahead and tee these up, and we'll just take these one at a time. So the City of Independence Municipal Services Department has requested a temporary construction easement and a small permanent easement to be granted on the corner of US Highway 24 and Osage Street at the corner of US 24 and Springs Street. These easements are part of a larger improvement plan for US Highway 24 from Forest Street all the way to M291, which will also end up including passing in front of the administrative headquarters building, as well as the North Independence branches. The project includes upgraded stormwater management, sidewalks, turn lanes, and other similar streetscape improvements. Typically, staff has been authorized to grant temporary construction easements, and the board has retained the right to grant permanent easements. These easements are essentially just the corner where the sidewalk on the side street meets the sidewalk on US Highway 24. The issue was not considered by the building committee as the request came in after the most recent building committee meeting, and the city wanted a decision before the next committee meeting. In terms of values, although primarily ministerial, this action also reflects the value of stewardship that the library believes that the public and private dollars entrusted to us must be effectively and efficiently used to improve our community. Staff recommendation is that considering the very small amount of land in question and the trade of taxpayer assets to another tax-supported entity, and the considerable benefit of the improvements, staff recommends granting a permanent easement without compensation to the City of Independence.
This is Brent Chalmer, co-chair of the building committee. I recommend granting the permanent easement without compensation.
Second. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Yeah, second, Michael.
Okay, it's a moved and second that we grant it for no compensation an easement to the City of Independence. So any discussion? Any questions of Brent or others? It appears to me basically that we're giving away an easement, so we're going to have sewers and sidewalks and curbs, which are probably not a bad deal anyway.
I'd make that trade any day.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of this of the motion made and seconded, please signify by stating aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed? Abstaining? Okay, thank you, it passed.
Okay, yeah, next topic is the specialized tax recovery agreement. Clay County believes, and this is the county of Clay, believes that there is approximately $50 million in unrecognized market value available in airplanes hangared in Clay County, but not reported on the tax rolls. Specialized Tax Recovery of Cleveland, Ohio is a consulting company offering to work with the county to provide data to properly assess these airplanes. In exchange for providing all necessary information to record this property, Specialized Tax Recovery will be paid 35% of all recovered revenue, penalties, and late fees. When staff discovered this proposal, it was clear that there was a benefit to the library and that this arrangement would result in new revenue for MCPL. However, the agreement was drafted without MCPL's authorization or consent, and Mr. Grubaugh believed that the county could not divert MCPL's revenue without express authorization. Values, defending the tax base and the library's autonomy are all components of stewardship that the library believes that the public and private dollars entrusted to us must be effectively and efficiently used to improve our community. Staff recommends a motion to empower staff to join with Clay County and their consulting agreement with Specialized Tax Recovery of Cleveland, Ohio, to help properly record the aircraft property on the tax rolls for years 2018 through 2024, and that Specialized Tax Recovery be compensated as outlined in the attached agreement. And I should mention that that motion was recommended by Mr. Grubaugh.
Is it legal to pay the, just curious, the specialized tax company 35% from our pay? It's legal? Just curious.
I don't know, that's the question. So do we have a motion to move this, that we enter in the agreement with the county?
It's Brent Schoenemeyer. I recommend the motion as stated in the staff recommendation rather than rereading it all. It's there on the screen.
Any second?
Here, a second.
It's been moved and seconded that there be authorization for the library to join in this, to join in with Clay County for the agreement for the company that discovered this untaxed valuation. Okay, any discussion on this?
Just a quick comment. Mr. Grubau happens to be the library's district's attorney. So this is something that our attorney is recommending that we do in order to participate in this effort.
I'd like to ask Mr. Grubauer, if we don't do this, what's the ramifications?
Well, most likely what happens is either, well, what is, I think it would be a big mistake for you to just let it happen without your approval, and have Clay County remit to you the 2/3 of revenue that they collect off of your levy. I think you need to protect your tax revenue. So what would potentially happen is either we end up in a lawsuit with Clay County over their ability to commit your funds, or Clay County would proceed without you, and they just would not collect that portion of the tax funds which represent your levy.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the library join into the agreement with Clay County. All in favor, please signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstaining? Yeah, the motion's passed.
Thank you. Next item?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next item is the August board meeting. And so Missouri statutes require the boards of consolidated library districts to meet at least 10 times each year. It is common for a library board, for this library board, to choose to cancel the monthly meetings in August and December each year. And should mention that's 10 times in regular session. It doesn't say anything about committee meetings or special meetings. So the decision is mostly ministerial. However, it might be suggested that the decision to cancel the meeting could correlate with trust, that the library believes that trust underlies success and that trust is built through integrity, fairness, and reliability. So staff's recommendation is, per our tradition, to cancel the August meeting.
It's Brent Schoenemeyer. We've been working really, really hard. So I'm going to make a motion that we cancel the August meeting.
This is Joyce and I second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board meeting for August be canceled. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? And abstaining. All right, the motion is carried.
Yeah, one last new business item. Happy to read that. And it's election of officers. The current MCPL officers were elected in July of 2019 at the meeting of the board. The board bylaws, Article 2, Section 2 state the following. The authors so designated shall be elected at the regular July meeting of the board or soon thereafter as the board shall otherwise provide, and upon duly elected shall hold office for a term of 2 years or until their successor be elected. Article 2, Section 1 designates the elected officers of the library board to be as follows. The officers of the Mid-Continent Public Library Board of Trustees shall be the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. The value, this action is mostly ministerial, however, following the previously established practices and policies, demonstrate integrity, building on the value of trust. And the library believes the trust underlies success, and the trust is built through integrity, fairness, and reliability. Staff recommends that electing the board leadership is the purview of the Board of Trustees, and staff has no recommendation other than the board consider electing the library's Director of Internal Communications and Custodian of Records to be the board secretary. That's Teresa.
Is there a slate being presented or next?
For the, for the board secretary or for the assistant vice president treasurer?
Did the executive committee meet and have nominations that they want us to consider?
Honestly, I don't think they did,
Okay.
but I'd be happy to start out with a nomination for president with Mr. Ron Thewis, who has been a wonderful vice president, has helped me out tremendously.
Michelle, that's you.
Right.
Yeah, did you hear that?
I did. We did. I'll second that motion.
Is that to be a vote? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that I assume Michelle's position. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please signify by aye.
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 Opposed? And abstaining.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you very much. I am deeply honored.
This is Joycelyn. Congratulations, Ron. I would like to nominate, as recommended by staff and as has been our tradition, to nominate our Director of Internal Communications and Custodian of Records as the board secretary, considering the outstanding job and that she has done and the fact that none of the rest of us would really want to do that. You could strike that last part, but I would like to nominate Teresa as the board secretary.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Teresa would stay in her position. It was obviously the most important for the board. Any discussion or comments? Okay, I'm sorry.
Do you need
Did
a
I hear
second to
something?
that motion, Ron?
Oh, okay.
No, we have a motion and second. I think Ron was just looking for any other comments or discussion before he called the question.
Yeah, so all in favor of having Teresa assume her continued position, please signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Teresa, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
If I can interrupt just a moment, this is Phil. These are nominations. It doesn't really require a motion, just a nomination. Doesn't require a second. And the real issue is, are there any other nominations? And then vote between the nominees.
Do you want us to do it over?
Pardon?
Do you want us to do it over?
No, I think it's clear
Okay.
that there were no other nominations. So
Sure.
because it was unanimous.
Yeah, I think that was the tenor of it we picked up.
Thank you, Phil. We'll correct that on these final two, so.
I have a nomination. Michael Lasso, vice president.
It's been moved that Mike be nominated for vice president. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Mike be nominated for vice president. Any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor of having Mike assume the position of vice president, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you. Congratulations, Mike.
Last,
Treasurer.
last.
If
position,
treasurer, I'm going to nominate my friend and colleague Joycelyn Tucker Burgo to be treasurer.
It's been moved that Joycelyn be nominated for treasurer. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, any other candidates? Good. It's been moved and seconded that Joycelyn assume the position of treasurer for the board. All in favor, please signify by stating aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Thank you, Joycelyn.
Thank you.
So we have leadership.
Candidates and positions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this, but if you would allow me, Ron, I'd like a moment to say thank you to Michelle and to you and to Charlotte. This has been a most unusual year to lead the library, and your help and assistance. I don't know that if we could have been as successful had we not had your leadership. So thank you.
I think we're going to a closed session. Do we have a?
I make a motion that we go to closed session as provided under Missouri law to discuss leasing, purchase real estate by a government body where public knowledge of the transaction might adversely affect the legal consideration.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to go to closed session. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?